In this video, I'm going step by step on how I built these beautiful laminate countertops for about 300 bucks using particle board and Formica 180fx laminate and some ogee edging. One of the very first things I did to make my life easier is I had the big box retail store rip me a piece of particle board into 24-inch wide pieces. Now the two pieces actually came out to be 24 inches wide. I used as the main countertop, and then the other two pieces I'm just ripping those in half and I'm screwing those together to form a 1.5 inch thickness of countertop, if that makes any sense, because each piece is 3/4 inch. Now traditionally a lot of people will make the countertops the 3/4 inch piece and then just glue or whatever, screw a trim piece around the edge to double it up to make it the 1.5 inch thickness. But to me, I had this particle board here. I like the solidness of making the whole thing 1.5 inch thick as much as I can, so I went ahead and did that. In this video clip, you can see I am screwing the two pieces together here, and I'm not using any glue, frankly, because I did not have glue on hand. But some wood glue between these would definitely help and be nice, but the screws also by themselves hold just fine. I started by screwing through the bottom piece into the top piece, just 2 screws just to hold it on there, and then I went from the top to the bottom and screwed it down. That way I don't have any screws poking out the top of this piece in case they go in too deep or something, which these ones do kind of poke out because they're 1.5 inches on the money. You could also use 3/8 screws if you could find them, or possibly 1.25 inch, but those don't really get a lot of meat in there. In this awkward kitchen layout, I built these countertops to maximize the counter space using what I could, and in this situation it took some angles to make a walkway, a path to get through, and also maximize the counter space. So that took a little bit of figuring out to get these angles right, and of course your situation will vary. Whatever size you need to make your countertops, however you want to do it, that's all up to you. It's a really good idea to cut out the kitchen sink opening before you laminate the countertop, so that's what I'm doing here. The first thing I did is I took some measurements and made sure it was centered up where I wanted it, and after I did that I took a marker and marked around it. And of course when you go to cut it out, you got to cut inside that mark about it's about 3/4 inch on this sink. I received my laminate in the mail, and I needed to cut it down to be the width of the countertops, and this is a 5-foot wide roll by 12 foot long, and it seemed like it'd be kind of crazy to unroll it and try to cut it in half that way. So I took a flooring saw and made a slit where I could insert my jigsaw, and I just cut it in half that way, and it worked just fine. Laminating the laminate to your countertop deck that you just constructed, we want to use the original contact cement, the crazy solvent stuff. Yeah, it stinks and it's messy, but that stuff is super strong when you bond it. So you coat both sides of your deck and your laminate, you let it sit for about 15 minutes, you put it together, and I have a J roller somewhere, which is like a roller you use to put pressure on it, but I could not find it. So unfortunately my method here was to walk on it and to use my hands. Eventually I figured out I could use a rag to glide across the laminate and apply pressure with my hand, and that would be good enough. this piece, once I got the laminate pressed down pretty firmly, I took my router with a flush trim bit and went ahead and did the edges. Here's a clip of the flush trim bit at work here on the router. You can see you need one of these absolutely when you're doing laminate. After I edged this, I went back with a rag in my hand and pressed down really hard around the edges and everywhere else on this laminate, made sure it was really adhered. Then I took my flush trim and cut out the kitchen sink opening. Before I started gluing on this edging, I prepped the edges of the countertop with this detail sander and some 80 grit sandpaper. On my countertops, I had to use an angle finder for all these weird random angles I cut. And then I used a miter saw to cut the angles. It helps. What you do is you kind of tape one piece in to go off of, and then figure out the other ones and make them fit up as good as you can. As you can see here, even as I'm gluing this first piece on here, I have the other piece taped on there just so I can press this one right up against it, and I know where they're going to go together, and then you get the tightest seam that way, or the tightest joint. I'm using some Titebond 2 regular type wood glue, and even though I didn't figure it out first, I figured out the best way is put a line in the little groove they got in this edging, and then another little line below it of glue, and you just press it up against your countertop and kind of wiggle it up and down a little bit, smear the glue, then it'll stick pretty good. And then after that, that's when you go ahead and start taping it on there. So you wait about an hour for that glue to dry, and you pull the tape off, and your countertops are done. All you need now, maybe a nice little backsplash or something, some tiles or something on the back of there. But it's all done now. Countertop are done, man.